Hi everyone, it's 2 minutes before we're going to go live with the Dough Doctor, and I'm going to start answering your baking questions. So let's see who's out there. In these first couple minutes, I can wave at you. Welcome, welcome. So nice to see you. I hit wave and then I wave. All right. For the folks who have just joined, I'm going to ask you to help me with a technical issue, all right? I don't know if I'm going to use the whiteboard, but I'm going to hold it up. If the lettering is backwards, let me know in the comments. Is it backwards or forwards? Can you see the word ratios there? Let me know. I have learned how to fix it. It's very exciting. 1 more minute and we'll get started. We have some great questions today. It's backwards. All right, thank you, Lady Dynamite. So I researched the fix. Let's see. Nope. Okay, well, just let me know. Still backwards? I think it is. Okay, all right. Oh well, that's all right. Forget it. We're just going to move forward. Welcome, bakers, to another episode of the Dough Doctor Live. I'm your host, Chef Colette, and we are going to start. We're going to just jump right into the questions. Because wow, there were some good ones. Couple reminders before I get started. I want to let you know there's a new post on the blog at bakingwithcolette.com of eclairs. And my God, they are so delicious. If you haven't made eclairs in a while, please go to the website, click on recipes and blog posts, and there's a great recipe for eclairs, pastry cream, and ganache to top them with. I promise you, they are worth your time and worth the calories. So that's on the blog at bakingwithcolette.com. And then also, please tag me in your bakes. I absolutely love to see your beautiful work. Sometimes I scroll through and I stumble on what you're baking, but you can tag me directly and then I can mention it here in the show. As a matter of fact, one of our bakers posted a beautiful challah that she had taken the dough and dyed it blue and yellow. It was this beautiful challah in like the Ukrainian flag colors. And I wish I had the technology to show you this photo. It really turned out just beautiful. It had a gorgeous proof and a gorgeous bake. And it was, you know, totally like represent. All right, so that's enough for the housekeeping for now. We're going to jump into the questions. One question came in super early on Monday. This one came in via email from one of our bakers who was taking Danish from scratch, which is my one of my Craftsy classes, craftsy.com classes, on how to make Danish pastry at home, Danish from scratch. And this baker wrote in, she had made one of her Danishes. The filling actually looked like it had jumped out of the pastry after baking. So here's the thing. Whenever we make Danish pastries, we make croissants, we make turnovers, any kind of a filled pastry, pre-baking, small, in this usually goes for small and individual pastries, not for our larger pastries like pies or tarts, but our small ones. we want to keep the filling to a minimum. And it's not going to look like enough. You're going to look at it and you're like, my God, that is not, I love cherry filling. This cannot possibly be enough cherry filling. But what we need to consider, bakers, is that we have in the oven, the baking processes are going on. And there's 7 or 8 baking processes depending on what textbook you're reading. And especially when we're working with a laminated dough that has yeast in it, so it's going to give off carbon dioxide gas, or we're working with something like puff pastry, which we've layered like butter and dough and butter and dough and butter and dough. And as that bakes in the oven, it's creating steam, so we've got that lift. So what happens is that pressure, I mean, almost think of it like a little mini volcano. That pressure, it actually just lifts, it lifts the, if there's excess filling, it will lift it and throw it over the side, like a life preserver over a boat. So just keep those fillings to a minimum. And to give you an alternative technique and an option, if you want to use more filling, this wouldn't go for turnovers, but it would go for Danish. And that would be to, if you're using a jam or like a cherry filling or an already cooked filling, that can be added after the bake. The only thing you need to do is, if that pastry is flat, where the filling is going to go, you need to dock it. And, which means you got to take a fork and you got to poke it wherever that filling is would be, otherwise that pastry is going to lift up too. All right, so that answers our question from Monday. And that, as I said, that came via email. You can email me at bakingwithcolette@gmail.com. That works. I should get it. Or just watch for Friday's notification to start dropping those questions in. You can DM me too. Just slide in those DMs. All right, so that was the first question, filling in Danish pastry. Now, the next question that came in piggybacks onto a question that we have often, and that's about high altitude baking. We could do a whole show on high altitude baking. We could do a podcast on high altitude baking. So what I decided when this question came in, and it was kind of dictated about how this question came in. So the question was how to manage dryness in our final baked products when we're working at high altitude. Well, the higher the altitude, the lower the air pressure. And this affects our bakes. But it gets worse. It doesn't get better. It can get worse. So what this does is it can dry out the finished product because the liquid evaporates more quickly. And where it gets worse is you may find a solution, but because high altitude climates often have like little microclimates, I will learn to talk, I promise, microclimates. What works for you in your kitchen may not work for somebody else down the road. So for those of you baking at high altitude, what you want to do, and I say this all the time, and actually bakers, I recommend you all do this, take careful notes of what works, but especially if you're baking at high altitude. So what you want to do to make sure you have a little bit more moisture in the product and that your finished baked goods aren't dry. And then specifically, this would be like for cakes and muffins. Anything with a cakey texture. We could include, like cupcakes, cakes, and muffins, quick breads. They fall into this trap of where they can be dry at high altitude. It doesn't show up with breads, not really cookies. Smaller units can kind of handle things. Small units, I mean like cookies in particular, can sort of handle baking adversities better than something like a cake or something that's a little bit bigger. So what you want to do is over 3,000 feet, you want to add 1 to 2 tablespoons more liquid. So you're thinking, oh, you're giving me a range. Yes, because every area is a little bit different. So you're going to try it. And first try 1 tablespoon. And then if it's still not moist enough, try 2 tablespoons. Okay, I hear you. Some of you may be above 3,000 feet. So for every 1,000 feet above 3,000, you're going to add 1.5 teaspoons. That's half a teaspoon. Now, I'm not fond of talking in volumetric measurements, but until we figure it out, what works for you and that particular recipe, then that's the best way to do it. And the liquid you want to use to make those adjustments is egg. Now, I went back and did some research, and even some uber experts were saying add egg white. And you're like, easy. I've got egg whites. Maybe you have egg whites in your fridge or egg whites in your freezer, but no. What we want to use is whole egg. All right, so we're high altitude question. You got to add 1 to 2 tablespoons above 3,000 feet for cakes, muffins, and cupcakes and quick breads. Those tend to dry out. So this is what you're going to do. I have the egg in the mixer bowl. And I mean the measuring cup, like mixer bowl. No, this is a measuring cup. And I have my whisk. And you notice this is kind of tall. It's a Pyrex measure. I'm going to stick the whisk in there. And I'm going to whisk the heck out of it until the egg white and the egg yolk are fully mixed. And this is what I would measure to adjust for my high altitude cake, muffin, quick bread, and cupcake bakes. Why? Because there's fat in the egg yolk and there's lecithin in the egg yolk. And both those ingredients, lecithin is an emulsifier, both those ingredients will help with helping our cake be a little bit more moist when we are baking at high altitude and you have experienced dryness with those types of bakes. All right? Oh, BTW, when you're mixing an egg wash, that's a really good technique to use the whisk like that. You saw how quickly they mix together. All right. Any questions about that? Throw them in the chat. So that was our question for this week about high altitude baking. And I welcome your even though I am really completely at sea level, I welcome your high altitude questions, but I will break them down. We'll be a little bit more specific since it's such a broad topic. All right? Okay, I'm going to check the chat and just see if we have any questions. Okay, great. And our Danish baker is on. So that's great. She got her answer in real time. Awesome. It's so great to see you guys. Perfect. All right. Okay, so let's take a live question and then we'll go back to our questions from yesterday and from earlier in the week. So one of our bakers is writing, she's got an oven that's old and the temperature is not stable. All right, so sometimes in our older ovens, the thermostat will just get kind of tired and it just doesn't come back up to temperature as quickly as it did when the stove was new. So the really great fix for this is, first of all, make sure you're super organized, and I'm sure you are, but try to make sure that the time that the oven door is open is as limited as possible. So have a landing zone, and never, bakers, this goes for all of you, when you're testing for temperature or you're skewering a cake to see, or a banana bread or a quick bread or whatever you're making to make sure that it's done, you've got your oven mitts on, open that oven door, slide the product out, close the oven door, put it on the stove top or a rack very close, test, and then back in the oven, close the door as quickly as possible. Never ever hover, never test with the oven door open, because that thermostat, then the temperature drops with the oven door open, and that thermostat is just working so hard to come back up to temperature. So that's one way we can protect our ovens and keep them working well. Now, I'm not saying in an older oven, this is just a question of time. And so what the fix that works so brilliantly, and some of you have heard this before, so if I'm like a broken record, I apologize. Get a pizza stone. One that measures at least 15 by 12, that's not very big, and you put it on the bottom rack, all right? And you just leave it in there. You preheat whatever you're making. It can be a batch of cookies at 350. But what you want to do, the trick with the pizza stone, is to increase your preheat time to 30 minutes. All right? Now, some of you may be baking artisan breads. So you're very used to preheating your pizza stone to 500 degrees and then loading your bread onto it. And that's good. That's what you ought to be doing. However, in this instance of where we are working with an older oven, and we're just trying to keep that temperature equalized, we're going to preheat to the temperature, we're going to heat or preheat to the temperature that's dictated in the recipe. All right? So 350. All we want to do is we want to use the stone to, and they're made of different materials. We want to use the stone to heat up and equalize the temperature. So there's more radiant heat around our product. You'll find it will bake more evenly. And then when you do have to open the oven door to test, the recovery of the thermostat won't be so dramatic. All right? So keep those key points in mind. And if you're someone who likes to bake 2 racks at a time, and then you're like, well, oh my God, this pizza stone's going to take up my bottom rack. Go on the website for your whoever manufactured your oven, and you might be able to get, I would bet money that you could get an additional rack for not very much, 20 bucks. So that's how to deal with an older oven that's like just not having it. All right? Pizza stone works great. You can find them. I think mine was about $23. Any questions on that? You can always message me, and I'll get you the link. That's what I'll do. I'll find my words as well. Now, wait a second. You know what? This is great. To piggyback onto the pizza, one of our bakers made a comment about the pizza steels made in the USA are wonderful. They are. But for this purpose, you want to get more of a stone pizza, more of a stone or ceramic pizza stone. The steel is just not going to heat quite as slowly, and I mean it's going to heat, but we want it. Get a pizza stone. I'm just about ready to open the oven door and pull the one I have in the oven out to show you guys. Should I do that? Maybe I should do that. Hold on a second. Right here, this little sucker has been just a godsend for my oven. It really just has been great. And okay, full disclosure, not so clean on this side, but you can see this thickness is perfect. All right, that's it. So now let's go back to our questions. I'm just looking for any more questions. I see former students on. That's just awesome. All right, now in the last portion of the show, I had a question come in last night where I was like, oh my God, that's such a great question. And it was a question that came in, or maybe it was this morning, I'm not quite sure. Time it's kind of fluid. But the question was, how can I check to see, how can I check and know if my recipe is going to work? Well, that is gold. Isn't that what we all want to know? When you find a new recipe on the Oracle, that is the internet, that sounds really great, we want to know, is it going to work or is it not going to work? So, and you might be saying, look, I bake for fun and pleasure and to just have a wonderful creative time in the kitchen. I'm not super interested in hardcore science. So I want to give you some easy tools so that you can evaluate a recipe and just at least have a clue if it's going to work or not. Number one, go make sure you're using a recipe from a trusted site. Or if you find something fun and creative that you want to try, but the recipe is in volume, it looks a little hinky, then try to find a similar recipe from a more trusted site. And so what are trusted sites? Trusted sites are sites where the recipes are tested. And they are few and far between, because we can just put anything up on the internet, and God knows people do. So my first go-to is kingarthurflour.com. I would try to find a similar recipe in their recipe database. They're a little bit better on testing, and they're such a hugely popular site that there's often a ton of ratings on every recipe. So that would be number one. Number two, what I'm going to teach you is just something that's actually very simple for our minds to wrap around, and that is this concept of a ratio. And in the culinary world, in our world of cooking and baking, a ratio is basically one ingredient and how it is like one ingredient amount compared to the other ingredients. All right? So for example, a pie dough, at Thanksgiving time when we're all making pies, a good pie dough is 3 parts flour, 2 parts fat, 1 part water. So I would assume many of you have your favorite pie dough recipe, and if you think of that 3-2-1 and you look at your favorite pie dough recipe or the one that you always use, I would say it pretty much follows that 3-2-1. A basic bread recipe is 5 parts flour, 3 parts water, and then some yeast and some salt. So just a basic knowledge of ratios will really help you when you are sort of analyzing potential recipes. Now, there was a book written about 8 years ago called Ratio, and it's written by a very vetted culinary author named Michael Ruhlman. And this book gives you ratios for every basic cake. It also goes into cooking, so it's good for that as well. Right now, it's available on Kindle for $1.99. So if you have been burned by internet recipes, I really recommend jump on Amazon and get this book for $2. Have it on your Kindle or on your iPad with you when you are looking at potential recipes. And so that is my recommendation. It is not a sexy cookbook by any stretch of the imagination. And I would guess the author thought he was going to set the world on fire when he wrote this book. And I will admit, some of us culinary professionals, my heart skipped a beat. We even, at Sur La Table, we based some baking classes off this book. Nobody showed up because it just wasn't sexy. But my God, you guys, incredible information, and it will help you. You can always message, I love looking at recipes. I'm not quite sure, if you ever have something that you're just burning to try, you can always send me a message. And if I can, I am more than happy to take a look. So Ratio, Michael Ruhlman, Ruhlman, on Kindle right now. It said limited time offer, $1.99. All right, everyone. So let me make sure I haven't missed anything. Let's see. Checking my cards. Oh, I'm going to piggyback. I did make a plug for the Ratio book. But another thing you want to look out for, and this can be just a quick look, if you're looking at a potential recipe, like the one thing, look at the chemical leaveners. What do I mean by chemical leaveners? Baking powder and baking soda. Baking powder is always more, if the two of them are in the same recipe, baking powder is always a larger amount than the baking soda. And I don't mean large as in large. I just mean you'll notice the recipe might say 1 teaspoon baking powder, and then it will say 1/4 teaspoon or 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. The reason is that too much baking soda in particular can make your finished baked goods taste like soap. All right? So if you see a recipe that has more soda than baking powder, that's a flag. And by the way, baking soda likes to clump. Since we're on the topic of baking soda, I recommend when you add it to your recipe, put it through a little strainer and then sift again. I would guess there might be a few of you in the audience who have baked something like a loaf of banana bread and had that chunk of soda in there, so a double sift will take care of that. But right there, even just that little nugget of knowledge about the chemical leaveners can save you a world of hurt when you're trying out a new recipe and you're just, you want to do it, but, I really believe the more successful our outcomes, the more motivated we are to bake more. So that's part of why I'm here, everyone. Sorry, I didn't want the timer to go off. I really believe the better we bake, the more we bake. We don't have to go into all the rocket science. We can still have fun, but that will really help too. Let me just check for any questions. Let's see. I think, the name of the book is Ratio. Ratio, and it's Michael Ruhlman. Great. Again, it's on Amazon. Well, everyone, it's 12:30. I'm going to let you go so you can get back to your kitchens, and hopefully you've got some fun baking projects planned for this weekend. Please, please, please tag me in your bakes. It really, I love talking about your beautiful baking, and I cannot thank you enough. The show grows every week. I think we're creating a wonderful community of bakers. So I will see you next week at noon Pacific next Saturday, right here on Instagram. Stay safe, happy baking, and have a wonderful week. Bye.